Good morning, church.
Good morning.
How are we doing today?
Yes.
Outstanding. I'm glad to hear that. I love those words, be able to say good morning. They are powerful words, aren't they?
Very.
Good, two words, good morning. Words have purpose. Words have meaning. They can be very inviting. They can be hurtful. But they can also provide another way of approaching someone when we're hurting. I forgive you. Three compelling words that free the person who needs to hear them. So I didn't say the person who said them, but the person that needs to hear them. I was once in a coaching class. And in that coaching class, they encouraged us to go home, take a mirror, and say three words to yourself. Look right at the mirror and say three words. I forgive you. Those are powerful words when you do that. Powerful words when we hear them. In Luke 23:34, while on the cross, Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Forgiveness. Forgiveness lies at the heart of the Christian faith. And Jesus Christ extended forgiveness even when he was dying on the cross. To think that here he is on the cross, and he is more concerned about us than himself. Because why? That's why he came. He didn't come for himself, he came for us. And there he is, just as he came, he was going to take his own last breath. The world did not take it from him. He surrendered it on his own. But he forgave us. He forgave those that day while on the cross. Forgive them. We come to know Jesus as our Lord and Savior. We ask him for forgiveness of our sinful past. And his response is, I forgive you. It's hard to ask for forgiveness if one isn't fully committed to changing their ways. Because if we don't change our ways, that means that we continue to be in that cycle of over and over and over again. And as we find ourselves in that repetitious cycle, it creates chaos. And chaos is a storm that we can never get out of until we decide to make a difference and say, enough. I'm done. Forgive me. Today, we will look at Christ's interaction with Peter regarding the question, do you love me and feed my sheep? As Jesus impressed Peter with the importance of his new role of tending the flock of Christ followers. So here he is. He has a leader, and he needs to encourage him to lead. See, he already knows that Peter is struggling with the forgive me part. So instead of focusing on Peter, why won't you say forgive me? Why aren't you saying I'm sorry? Why won't you say that I made a mistake? No, what does Jesus do? He says, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Wow, that's a game changer. That is where we see and how we see a person who knows other people, who knows their circumstances, and knows how to guide and direct them well. And that's what Jesus does, even today. So let's start by opening our Bibles or apps this morning, and let's look a little more at what's going to happen here with Jesus and Peter by opening them to the book of John, found in the New Testament, and turning to chapter 21, where I'll be reading verses 1 through 19. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed them in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." And again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus had asked him a third time. "Do you love me?" he said. "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." The word of the Lord. You see, after being raised from the dead, Jesus showed himself to the disciples 3 times and asked Peter 3 questions. Like Peter, Jesus offers us the same opportunity, 3 of them, that we're all going to look at today. First, we're going to look at Peter's foolishness. Perhaps it's our foolishness. Second is Peter's fulfillment and Peter's future. Never forget, we have a future too with Jesus. So as we examine this together, I hope that you see that Jesus redeems our past failures, nourishes us with his presence, and calls us forward into his mission. And with that being said, let's now dive in to that first question that we're to look at here. That even within our foolishness, we know that Jesus has compassion for us, that he finds us even during those foolish times. I want us to recognize that the King James translation refers to Thomas as the twin, Didymus, a reminder of his reputation as the doubter. How many of us here are doubters? Exactly. I raised my hand as well. I don't know one person that hasn't doubted at least once in their life, 2 or more perhaps. Beside him stands Peter the denier, together along with Nathanael, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others. These flawed but faithful men set out to fish on the Sea of Galilee. Picture that sea. That's a deep water. It's not a lake. It's not a small little stream. That is a serious body of water. And despite their skill and experience, They catch nothing. So that means that there's fish in this water. And these are experienced fishermen. These are experienced people who know how to catch fish. And yet they catch nothing. Even the familiar becomes fruitless without Jesus. You see that we think that we've got it in our walk with him, that we don't need him anymore, that we've been in church once, or we've read the Bible once, or I went to Sunday school once, or yeah, I saw a movie about him once. But if that's all we have, we'll become fruitless without him. We need him daily in our lives. Dare I say hourly and even to the minute. And for them, this moment comes after a separation from Jesus. See what happens there? When we separate ourselves, then we begin to wander, just like they did. They began to wander. As the disciples drift back into their old routines, we see a lesson here from them, is that our setbacks don't define our relationship with God. He meets us even when we retreat from what is familiar. See, there's hope. It's not one of those, oh, I made a mistake, and it's not redeemable. I'll say I'm sorry, he won't forgive me. That's not true. We saw that Peter has denied him twice now, both 3 times. And yet, we also know that sometimes when we forget who Jesus is, he becomes a stranger until we receive him back into our lives again. Just as they saw him as a stranger, they saw him as a stranger calling from the shore, telling them to cast their nets again. And even though they didn't really know who the stranger was, they obeyed. Despite their doubt and exhaustion, they obeyed. How often have we done that despite of ourselves, that Jesus has been calling us and calling us and calling us? And then finally, as we get closer to the shore, and that shore really is the end of our, I give up. I can't do this anymore. I'm at the end, I can't do it. And then all of a sudden we can hear Jesus in our lives. Cast your nets. Cast your nets. Experienced fishermen taking advice from an unknown voice. How often have we been experienced in our own lives, in our own careers, in our own families, not willing to want to hear from somebody else? But when we find ourselves doubting and exhausted, maybe we might take advice from an unknown voice. This is faith in action. See, this was their faith in action. It's our faith in action when we hear that voice in our head that calls us to be obedient, that calls us to action. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is trust and obey. Have we ever taken a leap in faith? Brother Jim has mentioned it recently about taking a leap in faith here at the church. Taking a leap in faith. It's challenging to do, isn't it? To take a leap of faith means to do something that you don't know what the consequences will be on the other side or down the road, but you're taking a leap of faith in hopes that it'll turn into something wonderful. So I said hope. Because, see, the key is we don't need to have hope, we just have to have faith. To have faith. Jesus standing on the shore. There he is on the shore. He saw them out in the water. How often do we stand on the shore at a beach and we can't see it because it's a little too far out, but there's a boat out there. There's a surfer out there. There's a swimmer out there. But we can't see them because we're not looking for them. They might be raising their hands saying, help, help. But we don't see them because we're not looking. But what about Jesus? Here they are, tired. They had a full night. They're just burnt out. And yet he saw them. He saw them. See, they were seen. Jesus sees us too. we are seen by Jesus. Jesus is fearless in his pursuit of them, just as he's in pursuit of us. He calls us back, not with rebuke, but with compassion. No matter what we've done in our lives, no matter what we've said, or how we've acted, or how we've behaved, no matter what, Jesus is still with us. Jesus will not rebuke us, but instead say, change your ways. I'm here. Follow me. In this scene, the 7 disciples represent more than just individuals. They symbolize the community of faith. Just as we here represent the community of faith of our church, Lakeside Community Church of the Nazarene. Learning again how to listen, how to trust, and how to re-engage again with Christ. So they had to re-plug in. They had to recharge their batteries, so to speak. So if they had to do that 2,000 years ago, it's okay if we have to still do it again today. It's not a bad thing. And in doing so, we see here our second point of Peter's fulfillment is that Jesus' presence feeds us, just as it fed him, as it fed them. So you have to recognize that he's saying, bring the fish, bring this fish in, and we'll cook some of them. But did you notice that there was already fish being cooked? See, yeah. He already knew they were going to be hungry. He already knew they were going to be tired. He already knew. And if he can feed them with fish, he can feed us with that spiritual fish as well, to be spiritually fed. Right? To be spiritually fed. And when the nets overflow, John recognizes Jesus. Because the abundance in our life, in some cases for some of us, it may not be tangible. It may not be financial. It may not be in the ways that we want it. But there are those, like the woman in the church, in the temple, who put in the pence that she had, just a little bit of coin that she had. And yet she walked away very full. She wasn't poor. So I want us to remember that we don't have to be overflowing with goodies to be filled, to be overflowing, to recognize Jesus in our lives, like John did. And Peter, who dives into the water without hesitation to reach him. Can you imagine someone having that kind of zeal to literally jump out of a boat into cold water? Because it's probably cold because it's been all night long, so it's not warm. Sun hasn't hit it yet. That's cold water, and yet he is willing to do that. His eagerness reflects his physical and spiritual longing to be close to Jesus. How many of us have that kind of a longing in our lives to jump out of the boat of our gook, of our lives, to be with Jesus? And as they come ashore, they find Jesus waiting with fire, fish, and bread. Everything they lacked after a fruitless night. Their bodies are warmed and fed, but their spirits are nourished in his presence. Amen. John notes the catch of 153 fish. A symbol some believe points to the fullness of the believer's community, though at minimum, it signifies a great abundant catch. See, there's going to be a time where we're going to get to experience, by God, our catch. Of how many fish did we catch? How many seed did we plant? How many did we water? How many did we take care of? See, it's not for us to harvest. That's God's role. But to know that there is an abundance. To know that catch of fish, that he actually numbered it, how many. And yet the real abundance is not found in the nets, but the breakfast table with Jesus. Just as we do communion, we're doing communion today, that breakfast table, if you will, that lunch table, that dinner table, as we spend time together in communion. In Jewish tradition, sharing a meal fosters unity and reconciliation. It's a space where relationships are mended and hearts are opened. And I hope that still exists today for us here. After all the disciples had abandoned Jesus, Peter, most painfully, Jesus invited them back into fellowship. He offered food, warmth, and grace. I want us to notice verse 13. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. John emphasizes this, that this is the third time Jesus appears after the resurrection, a moment to rekindle their identity and mission. See, it takes time, but Jesus, he has that time to spend with us. Even if we don't feel we deserve the time or are willing to take the time, he is waiting for us in time. Through the simple meal, Jesus calls them to remember who they are, his followers, nourished by his grace, sent for his purpose. You see, that's our future as believers. That is our future too, just as it was Peter's, is that Jesus' grace restores us and sends us the same way he did Peter, as he's preparing him to be that leader. That after breakfast, Jesus turns to Peter for a personal, one-on-one conversation, just as he does with us, a personal, one-on-one conversation. In front of the other disciples, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" The same number of times Peter had denied him. Each question offers Peter a chance to reaffirm his love, and with each response, Jesus commissions him, "Feed my sheep." While the other disciples, so present in the fishing scene, fade into the background, Peter steps forward into his future role. With Jesus' physical departure approaching, Peter will become the rock upon which the church's mission will continue. And it does today. But this moment is more than commissioning. It is a profound restoration act. Jesus doesn't minimize Peter's failure. He tenderly reverses it. And I want us to know here today that if you feel that there is something going on in your life that is irreversible, know that Jesus will reverse it. Know that Jesus is offering us, you and me, the same experience that Peter experienced. Because remember, it says that he tenderly revisits it. Just as he tenderly will revisit with us too. He's not going to be harsh. He's not going to rebuke us. He's not going to shame us. No. Jesus restores Peter not only to fellowship, but also to purpose. He entrusts him with the care of his followers, marking a pivotal moment in the church's story. In verse 19, Jesus speaks of Peter's future death, a sobering reminder that following Jesus comes with a cost, yet also glory. Peter's restoration shows us that failure does not disqualify us. It prepares us for faithful service, for what God has in store for us. So I want us to consider these steps. The story at the Sea of Galilee reminds us that God works through ordinary people, that's you and me, to accomplish his extraordinary plans. And without Jesus, our efforts are empty, but with him, they overflow. Jesus empowers and restores, inviting us to join his work of compassion and grace. Next, Peter's journey mirrors our own. Salvation begins with God's love reaching us, offering new life through Christ. So we don't have to continue on in that old lifestyle, the old behavior, the old antics. We can let those go, knowing that God has something better for us, that he will renew us, he'll give us new ways of living our life. Sanctification is his ongoing work, shaping us into the likeness of Jesus, the Christ likeness. And then, of course, there's the service. Service is the natural outflow, God working through us to bless others. This is the rhythm of Christian life. Redeemed, transformed, sent. But this story also asks something of us. Where are you tempted to go back to the boat? Where are we tempted to go back to in our lives, our old lives, the old behavior, the old antics? Where are you still carrying past failures? Where are we carrying those past failures? Where am I carrying those past failures? Have we let them go yet? Do we keep harboring them and holding on to them? as if it's a weight of a boat that hinders the boat from going anywhere, that hinders us from going anywhere in our lives, that the boat keeps, why is the boat almost sinking? It's because we've allowed the dead weight of that anchor that no longer needs to be attached to us, to let it go, to know that as soon as we release that anchor that is burdening us, that Jesus has a new anchor. He becomes our anchor. He is the anchor that lifts us up and steadies our path, even in choppy waters, that he will see us through to the shoreline. So I leave you with these final thoughts. The interactions between Peter and Jesus powerfully demonstrate Jesus' redemptive mission. They remind us of God's enduring grace, which never gives up on us and offers redemption even in the face of our most grievous failures. So no matter what we've done, no matter what anyone has done, that they can be forgiven. Know that even people who've done something to us, that we need to also recognize that we're to forgive them as well, as they are to seek forgiveness of themselves with Jesus himself. As a Christian, the Bible reminds us that we belong to God, not to the world. The Bible states, "You were bought at a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." Additionally, Romans 12, 1-2 says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. He is good, pleasing, perfect will." Let's hold this message dear to our hearts as we live by God's plan. Not our plan, not their plan, not your plan, God's plan. Love is a deliberate choice and a precious offering. It is the deep commitment of offering oneself to another for their betterment. See, it's not for our betterment. It's not for what do we get out of it. Not what do they get out of it. Not do anyone else get out of it. But for their betterment. See, we're to be uplifting. We're to be careful in how we approach somebody. We're to be loving and kind. Knowing that regardless of a person, regardless of what and how they believe and of what they're thinking, that if we live with God's love in us, that then he will work through us. Right? It's biblical justice. It's God's justice. It's not our justice. Just remember that whatever is happening today will look different 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. But what won't look different is the Bible and God's teaching and those same exact words. You can take this sermon will still preach 100 years from now, regardless of what's happening around us. It will still preach. Regardless of what we've done, it will still preach. God's grace is enough for those who have failed, those who have hidden, and those hungry for restoration. Remember, church, Jesus forgives. This decision is ours to follow him and glorify God. Jesus meets us, feeds us, and sends us to love others as we have been loved